which I love to share with everybody, because my education in ISKCON took more place in a practical field as in some kind of academic way. I am not the kind of high-profile Brahminical person. I was involved in a practical way from the first day I joined. That was the mood, at least, as we have the issue. Subject is the mood of the mission of Srila Prabhupada, which is, I think, a wonderful subject matter. It can be elaborated upon endlessly, because, and it's needed. It is absolutely needed to over and over again to remember the mood and the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's mission. Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am. And as time actually, we see that the time can have a very destructive function. People simply forget. So it is very, very important, I think, that we always remember each other for what purpose we came to Krishna consciousness, or what our purpose is to be here. This, I think, makes Krishna consciousness always exciting. And there is unlimited inspiration to be drawn from Srila Prabhupada, who was always like Krishna, Navayovanam, always fresh, always new, and always attractive. I remember on morning walk with, I wasn't there, but I heard from a godbrother who at the later stage of ISKCON then remembered while walking with Srila Prabhupada, he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, do you remember the good old days in New York when we started this movement?" And Prabhupada stopped him immediately. He said, there's no such a thing like good old days in Krishna consciousness. It's always new, it's always present, and it's always up to date. And Srila Prabhupada showed it by his own personal example. He didn't hesitate to comment on up-to-date issues. He didn't hesitate actually to comment on anything. I collected from his letters and from his personal exchanges, testimonies of God brothers. I collected the whole dictionary for myself on various issues, especially from his letters. And we can see actually that, there is nothing actually new in that sense, that the problems we have while struggling with Maya, problems we have by maintaining our Krishna consciousness in this world of illusions, they're always the same, basically. Yeah, it's the same lust, greed, envy, material motivation, and all this. So I am a simple man. I grew up in a Sankirtan van for 17 years. I was distributing actively books before finally I physically couldn't function in this regard. So I was placed in a position of a manager. I was 23 years temple president. And along the road, I also evolved from a brahmachari to a grihastha, then some sort of, whatever you want to call it, vanaprastha. So Krishna gave me a wonderful right, which I always love to share with others, and I find other devotees, there are not so many left in my age, many left the body already. It happens to me more and more when I ask about some godbrother or some devotee I used to know. I'm simply informed that he already left the body. So I'm kind of amazed I'm still alive. I'm here by Prabhupada's mercy, and I can still today sit here and talk into this phone and share and try to share with anybody who is interested what I got from Srila Prabhupada, because I don't have anything else. I remember in one Sunday feast, a guest asked me, "This is nice, you are quoting here and reading, but what is your opinion?" And being almost shocked, I told him, no, I don't have any opinion. My opinion is worthless. Are we still connected? Because I don't have your image anymore. Haribal? Are we connected?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, okay, because I don't see you anymore. So, yeah, so of course we see things personally and individually, but Prabhupada said, as soon as somebody starts, I think, I believe, in my opinion, he should actually close it down and go home. Because our opinions are of very limited validity. Basically, I don't have anything else to say or to give what I heard from Srila Prabhupada, or sometimes from the testimonies of those I do trust, because I see them strictly following Srila Prabhupada. So it's a wonderful subject matter about the mood and the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's mission. I joined a movement which was very simple. Basically, I joined 1972 in Germany. I'm not a German, but as an immigrant from those days, Czechoslovakia, my parents escaped to the West, and a few years later, just being 18 years old, I walked into the temple. So, and that was a temple which was a small house and packed with devotees who did nothing else as preach. He did nothing else as going out distributing books and preach. Whoever didn't preach and didn't distribute books basically couldn't stay and wasn't even considered a devotee. Of course, that concept, in essence, it's true, but as naturally, and Prabhupada predicted that it will be not like that everybody will live in a temple and everybody will sit every day in a Sankirtan van and things like that. Of course not. Now we have an ISKCON, we have a Krishna conscious movement being spread out to the degree I cannot comment upon. My experience is rather limited. I was most of the time serving in Europe, Middle Europe, and Scandinavia. So I cannot speak for the whole world. I cannot speak for the whole ISKCON. I absolutely don't feel authorized to make some global analysis about ISKCON. Devotees ask me sometimes about these things, and I have to disappoint them. I see the word ISKCON is for me something very personal. It is consisting out of individual devotees. Therefore, I love to travel around and learn from them and about them, because every devotee has basically an amazing story to tell, how he came to Krishna consciousness, how that devotee is surviving in various forms, various ashramas, how he evolves, how he maintains his Krishna consciousness in a non-Krishna conscious world. So Srila Prabhupada showed us the way, and whatever I can say and whatever I can give is coming basically only from him. You will find practically whatever I say, I always have a backup in my mind. I have a quote from Srila Prabhupada on that. So I could maybe read a letter as an introduction. A letter from 1971, the year before I joined. Prabhupada writes from Delhi to Udharan Prabhu, a letter which, in a brief, depicts exactly the mood and the mission of his movement. This is just an excerpt. This is where Prabhupada, that's 1972, his ISKCON was already growing very rapidly. So growing means, and he describes here, so when you preach, the management will follow like a shadow. And then a problem evolved, that how much management is necessary to keep the preaching going on. So Prabhupada writes, This routine work, such as chanting, speaking, rising early, cleaning, cooking, and offering prasadam, artik, reading books. These are the activities and they are the backbone of our society. And if we practice them nicely in a regulative manner, then our whole program will be successful. If we become slack or neglect these things, then everything else we may try will fail. So it is very important that you keep your standards very high in these activities, and then your preaching will be strong. Preaching is our real business, preaching and distributing books. If your preaching work is strong, then your management of temple affairs will also become automatically very strong. Just like if the head wills it, the hand will move. And preaching is like the head of our Krishna conscious society. If the head is removed, the whole body dies. Managing is the hands, which work nicely if the head is healthy. If the hands are removed, the body will not die, but it will be crippled. So preaching is more important than management, but both must be there if the whole body is to operate nicely. So nowadays we find in ISKCON management being conducted by devotees, I would say, who are far more qualified as I was as a manager. We have devotees, experienced devotees, because you need some material expertise for that as well. Prabhupada said enthusiasm is good, but some brain is required also. So I joined the movement. There was lots of enthusiasm, amazing amount of enthusiasm. Actually, I joined on that basis. I never saw such an amount of enthusiastic people working together. That in itself was preaching. I was amazed. I was a silent, introverted boy, an artist, you know, who actually lived in a world on his own, spontaneously not being attracted much by the Kami society or whatever people did. And suddenly I was in the midst of a vibrant, most enthusiastic group of young men and women who were just running around, you know, just, there was lots of passion also, because the oldest member of that yatra I joined in Germany in 1971 was maybe 22 or 25 years old. That was a senior Vaishnava. So, of course, naturally, when you are young, more of passion is there. So, and we didn't care. Whatever was there, we invested into the preaching. And Srila Prabhupada's personality was so all-pervading, you couldn't say anything without quoting Prabhupada. Impossible. You couldn't mention anything or say anything without saying Prabhupada said. Prabhupada, it was so frequent that even Prabhupada started to complain. He said, they're always saying Prabhupada said, but actually I didn't say that. So Prabhupada's personality was so all-pervading that naturally the spirit of preaching was there, because his main purpose to appear and his main purpose to be here was actually to spread this movement. It's a Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan means together, kirtan, broadcasting the holy name. And Srila Prabhupada in a very early stage didn't make the secret out of this, that the best way to do it is through his books. That was actually quite a mystery in the beginning. Devotees loved to go out, chant on the street, Harinam, everything wonderful. And then the books were there. And we know the beginning of book distribution, it started quite spontaneously. Prabhupada never told us how to distribute these books. He just wanted them to go out. So devotees experimented in all kinds of ways, and whoever touched that service became exceptionally ecstatic. The others were also ecstatic, but whoever went out distributing books, he became especially ecstatic. So I'm grateful to all those devotees who kicked me out on the street from the first day I joined. Even this activity of book selling was probably the last thing I could imagine I will do in my life. It was totally against my nature, what I thought my nature is. But already 2-3 weeks on the street distributing Prabhupada's books, I start to realize I like it. And we got lots of opposition. In Germany, 1972, they were really not prepared for having Hare Krishnas running around the streets selling books. But we were young and we loved that. I'm coming from a generation of people who spontaneously ask questions. They doubted everything. Nothing is already in a school I accepted as being given just because somebody said so. We doubted everything, but usually we had no alternative. Doubting became like a standard, but there was no answers. Until I met Srila Prabhupada. Then suddenly everything started to make sense. Because Srila Prabhupada, in his preaching, he simply made sense. He wanted us to understand. How many times he said this? Do you understand? Do you understand? Always, always asking. Because he knew that we have to understand. Of course, there are many things we cannot understand due to our conditioning. Don't worry, until today, I didn't hear Krishna's flute being played live. I was taught that issues like of an intimate nature, like Krishna's pastimes, are to be worshipped and are to be heard, but not to be much broadcasted because of the unqualified audience and the possibility of so many offenses being committed. So Prabhupada, I love that. When he was in Germany, he told us, first work, then samadhi. Oh, Germans love to hear this. So we work day and night. I mean, just to sit down was quite controversial, I have to say. We worked like clocks, like machines. Prabhupada works actually in Bhagavad Gita that surrendered soul works like a machine, completely under Krishna's control. So naturally, it was a very vibrant, ecstatic movement. Naturally, mistakes were made out of our immaturity, but all this was taken away by time. What should not be taken away by time is the mood Prabhupada implanted into us. This readiness to always inform others about Krishna consciousness. Because, and it was proven by time, if we don't preach to them, they will preach to us. They are preaching too, very heavily, you know, from the very early from the birth, we are exposed to a non-stop atheistic, materialistic propaganda in various shapes. So if we don't take a stand and we don't oppose and we don't actually boldly defend our position as a devotee, there's a danger that we will be infiltrated and we will be changed. I saw many people changing too. One of the nicest things when I meet a still alive godbrother or somebody who remembers me when I was 20 years old brahmachari running around, one of the nicest things they can tell me is, my God, you didn't change. And that's good. I don't want to change. I don't want to mutate into some petrified form of idealized, figure. Therefore, I carefully avoided positions and situations in ISKCON which will provoke this kind of attitude. It's kind of cheap process to be idealized, and it doesn't correspond to reality. So I love God brothers. I remember Srila Maharaj, who also departed. He had this wonderful slogan, be yourself. It sounds simple, but it's not simple at all. Because this is a world of names and designations, which are constantly imposed upon us. And we are constantly tempted to identify ourselves with these designations. which relate basically just to the body. Once we do that, our Krishna consciousness becomes compromised. Because we are nothing else. And Prabhupada again pointed it out. We are nothing else as the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. And that's it. In what kind of capacity or way we serve, that's another thing. But some are the leading servants, some are the following servants, but they are all servants. So Srila Prabhupada heavily implemented this mood into us. He went so far that he even said that even we are his disciples. We are all sent by Krishna and by his spiritual master to him. So actually he is just a caretaker of us. This is, when I read this, I was going, this is the utmost humility. This is a real humility. Prabhupada gave his life for us. He worked so hard, but by the end of the day, whatever came out of it, he thought, this is a gift of my spiritual master. I have to take care of it. So this is the mood, how one can survive in Krishna consciousness. I don't have a key how to survive. I'm amazed I survived that far. And the only credit I can ever get is that then I always point to Prabhupada's mercy. I don't have nothing to give, nothing. This is like whatever I did, what I could distribute, this altogether maybe 350,000 books or whatever. This is not me. I was never learning this. I never had that kind of qualification, how to approach people, how to give them a book, and nothing. And any devotee who came after me, who were far more powerful book distributors, basically when you ask them, how did you do that? They say, it's all mercy. There is nothing more to it. But that mercy has to be earned. There is a way how to actually expose oneself to that flow of mercy emanating from Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. So Prabhupada gives here the basic guideline. We have to keep ourselves intact by spiritual practice. The chanting must be there. Then naturally, to the degree of how serious we are, we will seek association also of the serious ones. Krishna is amazing. He is so liberal. He will even send a cheater to those who want to get cheated. So it's a struggle, it's a fight. But the ultimate guiding line is we will find our association along our desire. As we know, there are 3 levels of consciousness: thinking, feeling, and willing. And the mood of Srila Prabhupada's movement is set by the desire. If there is a strong desire, there will be strong association. And there will be all the help we can get. Krishna from the heart, that we will get help from those who come from outside, reflecting Srila Prabhupada's mercy. It all depends actually on our desire. This is a very subtle platform, and I saw it over and over again. So I got alarmed, I got cautious, because desire sometimes is very difficult even to diagnose and to localize. They sprout from our heart, and they will lead us to fields of actions which we didn't even plan for. We will get tested. Our desire will be tested. As Prabhupada tried to engage one devotee who was very unsteady, and it was difficult. The devotee always switched from one service to another. Finally, Prabhupada concluded he is not serious. His desire is not strong. So to cultivate that desire, that's actually the main purpose of this movement. To come together and share the gifts of Srila Prabhupada and encourage each other more and more to have a stronger desire to serve Krishna, to serve Srila Prabhupada, and to spread this movement. So this is actually the purpose. Prabhupada, I have documentations for that. Prabhupada was initially not even so enthusiastic to establish big temples. He said we can only do it on basis of preaching, on book distribution. Then came a growing congregation, something I had no idea what it is. The first 10 years in Krishna consciousness in Germany, we didn't have any congregation. It was just us, maybe 40, 50 devotees struggling with the German opposition. Congregation, we didn't know what it is. But then, of course, supporters came, people who didn't necessarily or couldn't even join us in a sense that they did exactly what we did, and they became very powerful supporters. So nowadays ISKCON is like spread out. It's like if you throw a stone into water, then the core is very deep, but then the water gets agitated and there's circles going around. And ultimately the whole water becomes agitated by these circles, by the initial impact of the stone. So Srila Prabhupada was like the impact. And then from there on, the seemingly calm waters of Maya, which are not calm at all actually, they got agitated by Krishna consciousness. And more people took part. And then things evolved to a situation nowadays, when I travel around, I can be sure of two things. Wherever I go, there will be Indian supporters and there will be Russian supporters. That's for sure. Well, whoever takes it, that's what it is. There are countries which are very difficult to preach. It's like really drilling a stone. And there are countries where things are more easy, but easy in which way? Maybe it's easy come, easy go. Depends. So we all have our fields where we are even planted into. So Chaitanya says, actually, there where you are, you should become actually a guru in that sense that you inform others about Krishna consciousness. Naturally, in the beginning, Prabhupada had to send this small band of devotees everywhere. They end up in the most wild places. But he also cautioned that can be also documented. The devotees should be more drawn locally. I saw in yatras where actually devotees are very active in a local sense. It got a strong kind of base. I served for 28 years in a yatra which was entirely imported, almost entirely imported. And when the leader finally got in trouble and he left, the whole thing collapsed. Within 1 week, the whole yatra simply collapsed. So, and even it was dynamic, we did wonderful things. I mean, I had the luxury to see things happening in ISKCON, which today in many regards one couldn't even dream about in some areas, So I saw books being distributed on levels in mounds. I lived in a North European zone where so many books were produced and distributed. There were actually more books produced and distributed as during the time Srila Prabhupada was present on the whole planet. So I saw quite some Hare Krishna explosions. And then I saw some implosions as well. This is the world we are living in. What can you do? So maybe, I don't know how we are live connected, because as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm quite audience oriented. Is there some scope for some feedbacks or for some discussion on this, what we are doing right now? Haribol? Is there some response I can get? Are we still connected?
We are connected, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. There's some disturbance here. I couldn't hear the last sentence. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Maybe if somebody has some comment or some question, it will be interesting.
Yes,
to make it
Prabhu.
more interactive.
Prabhu, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, yes.
I very much like what you mentioned about, we should, well, you in the beginning days, you were doing Sankirtan in the streets and distributing books and everything. I think today devotees do it as well. And it's in few places. I'm wondering, I don't know how much is it possible, but I know Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya's mission is to, every town and village, and Prabhupada brought it pretty much everywhere. But how about in every street or, pretty much every town or something? What is the scope, or how can we build up so that we can do Sankirtan, in our own town or something like that? Just like you were doing it with Prabhupada whenever it was in the, like you mentioned you were doing it in Germany and like that. So how do we do it? Prabhu, are you in Germany at the moment, or are you in?
No, actually, I'm staying in Czech Republic right now, in Prague. So, yeah, it's the way of preaching. When we speak specifically of book distribution, well, I have a very vivid memory. Before this whole pandemonia problem started, I could visit actually London, and I actually don't know a place, any better place to show in kind of wonderful way. The book distribution was massively organized. It takes lots of organization to get so many people involved. And I always felt immensely inspired in London because actually it is, I have to connect something on my phone. Okay, because actually, London's very exceptional. I don't know anything about America or other places, but to get so many people involved in the marathon time on book distribution, it's a wonderful thing to do. I'm coming from the days where it was very few, and there were these mega stars, extremely empowered devotees who could distribute many books single-handedly. But today the power is more shifted to the congregational field, naturally. So if anybody can distribute something and be part of something, it's wonderful. And altogether, the result is immense. And London and England is an exceptional, good example for that. So I was always extremely inspired how many people you could get involved in a particular time, like on marathon. But additionally to that, I would like to say that preaching, you see, we preached by book distribution, by speaking to people. Today, many devotees, without even knowing this, they preach by living, by simply living. And specifically speaking about the Indians, you know what Prabhupada said about Indians, he had a high expectation to them. He was very challenging, always quoting Lord Chaitanya, who said that specifically those who are born in that country, and specifically those who are related to that country, they should specifically preach. Maybe, I don't know if everybody knows it, but Prabhupada wanted to start ISKCON in India originally. He called it the League of Devotees. And his idea was to create already in a miniature ISKCON. He wanted to go to the West, but to create a miniature ISKCON with fully trained Indian devotees, the best cook, the best Mridanga player, the best pujari, the whole ISKCON picture, and then bring them with him to the West. So the Western devotees, or whoever comes, has an already perfect, blueprint of ISKCON. And then they can join, and these individual devotees becomes like the teachers in their own fields. That was Prabhupada's idea. It was actually brilliant, but unfortunately, he didn't get the cooperation in India. So he was quite upset, actually. And then he said, okay, then I will go alone. And actually, he did it alone, landing in a country he never was, never saw snow in his life, speaking to people he had basically no idea who these people are, except that they are eternal parts of Krishna. Finally speaking to hippies, which were the last, people with no culture, completely addicted to all kinds of drugs. Prabhupada said sometimes they remembered me on old Shaivites in India who smoke ganja and sit on the side of the street, and collect some donation. That's basically hippie lifestyle. Prabhupada was just, from these people, he created a movement. I mean, because they had one thing, which he immediately recognized. They were searching, they were looking, they wanted change. So that was the important part. So, what Prabhupada did with people's lives is just so amazing. So preaching today, maybe it's not conducted in such a, you could call it spectacular way, but it's conducted in a natural way. Whenever I go to Indian congregations, they want me to ask to say something. I feel embarrassed. I think you should preach to me, not me to you. Because many of them, they have a culture background still. Even I know India, it's degrading fast, but they have culture background, and you can see it, which we, the Mleksha Westerners, cannot really come up with. Without exception, practically, we are all the Varna Shankara, products, unwanted progeny people who joined this movement by Prabhupada's mercy. So in few weeks, I will go to Switzerland, okay? So Switzerland, you go to Zurich, what do you see? Indians, of course. They have even two Sandifis, one for the Swiss people, or whoever comes, and then it's Tamil Nadu. It's just the Indians having their own Sandifis on the same day, So I was for 1.5 years in Denmark. 90% of the guests in Denmark in the temple for the Sunday were Indians, of course. Yeah, wherever I go, it's either Indian. It is like that. So I think it's preaching is conducted more by living today also, but still it shouldn't exclude the book distribution. It is a really far out thing. I give an example of Russia, okay? There was not so long time ago an attempt being made of even Bhagavad Gita being banned, defined as a book which encourages terrorism, okay? It was very close. There was a law actually coming up to ban Bhagavad Gita and those who distribute it from the country even. And what happened? Well, the temple president in Moscow, he's also Indian. And he activated Indian support from India, where the minister of India got in contact with Mr. Putin and said, what are you doing? This is our Bhagavad Gita. You think we are all India and whole India is a bunch of terrorists or what? And Putin was not even properly informed. And actually, these two have a very funny connection. I noticed, I don't follow it so closely, but Mr. Putin is a kind of friend of the Indian Prime Minister. I saw just a glimpse of a press conference where Mr. Putin says straight on the camera, live, he said, we are talking a little bit too much here. We should rather listen to my friend, the Indian Prime Minister sitting next to me, because he is coming from a country with the oldest and most advanced human culture. He said it straight on camera. So I'm not making here propaganda for Mr. Putin, but it's quite interesting, actually, how things come up. So fortunately, that law was never passed, but even devotees are obstructed naturally. There's always a class of people who want to stop what we are doing. That was already happening during Prabhupada's time. In England, London, I don't know the detailed history, but it's a living example of that. I remember days where I went on a street when people saw me just in dhoti with a tilak, they were calling police. That was Germany, 1972. They called police. There's a madman on the street. He's dressed in bedsheet and he has some X spread in his face. That was, and we had so much police coming. I was practically spending every day. I was sitting in some police station. That was the beginning, Now we were just this dangerous sect, When we came to India, first time I came 1978 to India, of course, it was hilarious. It was just, I was thinking, there are all the dangerous sect members here. It was fantastic. I felt really at home. But in the West, we were the strange and dangerous people. So that changed. That changed. Now it's Krishna consciousness so established. I know from personal experience, the police in Germany, they are sometimes struggling. Who will be on service when the Ratha Yatra takes place? Because there's to be always some police supervision, because they think this is going to be a great day. First of all, nobody's fighting here. They are all singing and I get good food, yeah. So they are struggling. Who will be on service that day, just guarding Ratha Yatra? This is the police of today. I spoke to such a policeman, he told me this. He said, and tomorrow we have some demonstration, some political demonstration, some ultra radical characters. That's going to be heavy. Then we have to come with our horses and with our this. And Ratha Yatra for them, it's like holiday, because people are just chanting, singing, and there's food and, no problem. So things changed, much thanks also to the Indians who came up and said, come on, when an Indian person speaks and gives Bhagavad Gita, this is my book, it's our book, it sounds a little bit different. And when I come, they always think, yeah, where did you got this? Where did you learn that? Where are you coming from? But from an Indian-bodied person, it sounds very authoritative and very natural, So that's just one element. So today preaching takes place also in this way. It's very inspiring actually to see this, because we don't have just to give we are not just giving some religion or some belief. It's a culture. We are giving people a whole new life, how to live. So today, many, if not most devotees, preach more by their living. I just had, yesterday, I was in a small Czech village, close to a devotee farm, a project which started like 5 years ago, broken farm, they struggled to renovate this. And a man suddenly came, neighbor, and he said, you are also one of these people there with this Hare Krishna? And I said, yeah. He said, you don't look like that. Because I was just walking there, And I said, no, we don't care how we look. It's more important how you act. And he immediately agreed. And he said, I heard they're actually quite nice people, that? Because the neighbors, there's a word, villages, they talk a lot. So, and he said, they're quite nice people, actually, like almost surprised, because devotees don't care. They're shaved, they're tilaks, they look like devotees. So it was kind of exciting for the villagers to discover that, yeah, they look different, but they're actually quite, and he said, and you are quite normal, I asked him, what do you mean by normal? Because we don't drink, we don't eat any meat. That's in a Czech village already a big exception, That's an offense. There's not many vegetarians in Czech villages. So, and he didn't care. He didn't care. He said, no. You are helping even other people. And we, those who were dealing with him, his friends, they were going, they are good people, They are responsible. They are working hard, because they really work hard there. So nowadays, preaching is more like this. Still, we should not forget to have always a Bhagavad Gita close by, to have always Prabhupada's book close by. And if people really ask questions, they say, why don't you get a book? You can read about it. you know. So book distribution can take place on all kinds of levels, you know. So I'm more excited. I used to do these Sankirtan meetings where you have a 20 brahmachari sitting there, you know, ready to die for Prabhupada, Jai, you know. So that's nice. But I also end up with Sankirtan meetings with babies crawling around, you know, one baby sitting on my lap, you know, grihastas, family man, sitting there and thinking, how can I be part of this? One can. It's just being aware. There should be always a book close by. And when they ask, when they wonder, then finally you give them a book. That's the best information we can give. And when they come back and ask questions on basis of that book, that's even better. So books are the basis, Prabhupada said. They should always be there close by. So Sankirtan is for everybody. It's not for a limited group, like elite troops. No, anybody can do that. Here in Czech, there's still quite a deal of idealism going around, you know, amongst some devotees. And then they go out, you know, on Harinam with kids and everything, you know, and they have the books. I just recently saw a maybe 12 years old boy. He was so excited by the presence of the brahmacharis. They travel in a bus. So the parents were devotees. So they said, why don't you go a few days with them? And he joined the brahmachari party just for a few days. He was so excited. You know, he said, this is action here, you know, and it's like this. And I saw him distributing books on the street, a 12 years old kid. He goes to people, you know, and people are just amazed, you know, because you don't see 12 years old kids running in Czech around distributing books, you know. And he was just, take it, you know, and they felt like obliged, you know, it's a boy, okay, I have to buy it, okay. He loved that. I'm not saying we should have now 12 years old brahmachari parties traveling around. That's probably not possible. But why not just have some taste of it? Prabhupada writes in one letter, I expect every member of this Hare Krishna movement to know the art of book distribution. So anybody can get a taste, you know, provided he wants to.
Thank you, Prabhu.
There's some more questions or feedback?
Prabhu, I would like to keep in touch with you. Is there any way you have a contact details or something? So if
No
there is
problem.
some.
No problem. I have even a website, manidara.das.com. You know, so I don't have any, you see, I have the luxury, I'm not burdened by some institutional responsibilities. I don't have titles. I'm a kind of freelancing man. So I can speak out freely. I don't have to take into consideration even who is listening, you know. So I feel very light, very comfortable, because I can just tell you straight what Prabhupada says, and I was in all kinds of different stages of life, you could say, evolving from a very, very radical brahmachari, you know, up to the struggling father and husband and these kind of things. Involved with things which come along, grihasta ashrama, house renovation, and kind of not very inspiring projects, I have to say, but that's what we have to do. We have our responsibilities. Prabhupada struggled the whole life with this. He got the instruction from his spiritual master. I think he was around 25 years old or even younger. You must go and preach to English-speaking people. Prabhupada said, I remember that instruction every day. And his spiritual master left relatively at the early stage. So Prabhupada the whole life was with this question in his head, how shall I do that? I have my family. He was standing in his pharmacy, you know. The movement of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was based basically on sannyasis. brahmacharis. That was like the strong preaching force. That also kind of fell apart. I mean, if you study Prabhupada's life, you get all the inspiration you can get, because Prabhupada was in these situations too. Even his family life didn't have a happy end. And finally, Prabhupada was just pushed, and he very, very actually happily recollected that. He said, Krishna pushed me. He destroyed anything in my way what could me make attached to this world. And there was no other way, as I was simply free to go. I had to go. And if you consider what kind of suicidal mission that was in that age, to get on that ship and go to America to preach with few trunks of books which you didn't even know somebody's going to be ever reading them. Prabhupada just did that. And he almost died on that ship. So, you know, that's how you start a worldwide movement. I remember one man on the street, I distributed these books, simple man. He said, you know, I don't understand your books. It's all this Sanskrit and I don't understand it. But one book I read, and that's the life story, the biography of your guru, of your spiritual master. He said, I cried all the time. He said, what that man had to go through. And he actually, as he talked to me, he cried. Simple guy who had no idea about philosophy or whatever. So we can also learn that from Prabhupada. He preached through his personal example. The philosophy, I mean, I joined the movement, you know, hardly anybody could give a decent lecture. Nobody, especially in Germany, it went so far that Prabhupada wrote in one letter, he said, you cannot just sell the books, you have to read them also, you know, because he became aware how actually ignorant, in a Shastric way, how ignorant his disciples are. So he was starting getting worried because we were just running around selling the books. So it became like, okay, we have to read them also. But still, to read them and understand them, that's a long way to go. Still, Prabhupada didn't care. He wanted to have these books going out massively, you know, just by having the book, just getting a book, because he said that's also how they will take us seriously. When we just talk, they think, yeah, it's just some talking. But when a book is there, they think, oh, that must be something more serious. So that's why Prabhupada was stressing it so much. Otherwise, I'm just, you know, for me, it's just makes me also feel somewhat useful, you know, when I can share what I got from Prabhupada with others. My life is more like running out, you know. I don't have some direct warning, you know, I don't have any acute disease, and I'm relatively, for my age, quite functionable. But can happen anytime. So many Gopals already left, and they were even younger than me. So, so I value really the moment. I value the time, you know, where I can talk to somebody about Prabhupada. I can share all these things. This is wonderful. This is inspiring. So whatever it is, even I talk now through the phone, if I would sit with you in one room, it would be a little bit different, because it's really, nothing can replace a real personal association, person to person like that. But at least we have something, some images on the phone and some idea of, you know, how the other person is, and we can hear the audio. So sure, anybody out there who wants to ask about something, on any, not just book distribution, Prabhupada commented on so many things. He's the most documented acharya in a history of Vaishnavism, in audio, in video, in you know, in books, in memories of his disciples, you know. So for me, Krishna consciousness means just to studying Prabhupada, then automatically you will get to know about Krishna, and you will have to get to know wrote Spiritual Life. Okay. Hare Krishna. So, do we have the organizer of this conference who's monitoring the whole thing, or it's just a kind of free exchange?
Haribol.
So it clicks in.
Hare Krishna.
It's finished?
Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is there any more questions from anyone or any comments?
Okay. I guess it's getting on English time was a little bit late, isn't it? Maybe it's prasadam time or whatever. Prabhupada said we cannot preach to hungry people. So first there must be prasadam.
Okay, Prabhuji. Shall we end there then?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Manidara Prabhu, for sharing these
Thank
nice
you
insights.
to everybody who was out there. Thank you for giving me the chance to glorify Prabhupada a little bit more.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just a
Hare
small
Krishna.
announcement. We're going to be having Her Grace Urmila Mataji joining us at 2 p.m. and she's going to be speaking on the 7 purposes of ISKCON that Srila Prabhupada established. So please join us for that at 2 p.m. So we'll end the meeting here. Thank you very much once again, Manidara Prabhu, for joining us
Thank
and
you.
speaking about these topics.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.